how to become a data analyst in 2025. In today's episode, we're going to dive into everything that you need to know if you're interested in becoming a data analyst in 2025. Let's get into it. Hi everyone, if you're new here, my name is Nello. I like to talk about tech, data, career, and AI. So if you're interested in any of that, make sure you hit the subscribe button. You're going to love it here. There's been a ton of conversation online about AI and how it's replacing analysts. I want to happily say that in 2025, data analyst is still a high in demand role across multiple industries, and we're going to dive into what is required to get into this role if that's what you're interested in 2025. Now, I do want to say a lot of mistake that a lot of people make is that they want to work in just the technology industry. Technology industry is one of the highest paying industries, and I understand why, because a lot of the time it has remote flexibility, high pay. There's so many perks of working in the technology industry. However, in 2025 the market is more competitive, so I highly recommend that you start looking at companies that are not necessarily in the technology space but still have a ton of data and you can help them with their data. Manufacturing is a good one, transportation is a good one. There are so many companies. They are not necessarily tech companies that you can work with. Education, universities have data, and you can still get a job in 2025 in analytics, help build your skills, and maybe sometime in the future work in a tech company. So what would I recommend for someone who's looking to break into the analytics role in 2025? In 2025, the game is different, but I'm going to take a different approach with my advice in this video and not necessarily start by focusing on skills. The first thing that I would do is to figure out where you are as an individual. Now, the market is competitive. You have to figure out what's going to give you an edge. What makes you stand out? Do you have a degree? Do you have past experience? Do you not have a degree? And that's how I would tailor my strategy for job search if I was jumping into the 2025 job market looking for an analyst role. If you don't have a degree, I would highly recommend that you take a ton of certifications to show your qualifications, learn the skills, build projects, because you're going to be competing with people who have degrees and maybe have certifications. So what is going to make you stand out? You have to make sure that you're working twice as hard to ensure that you tailor yourself as an ideal candidate and a candidate that people want to work with. If you do have a degree and experience, you may just not have analytical skills. You may have a degree in something like geography or something that doesn't necessarily show any technical expertise. I still recommend learning the skills. I still recommend building out a project and a portfolio and still showcasing yourself as someone who is going to be an ideal candidate. The third person is someone who has the degree, the skills, the certification, but is not finding the job. Your problem might just be visibility. You may not be visible enough. You may not be applying for enough jobs. You may be targeting the wrong industry. So in that case, I would recommend working with an expert, someone who does career services, for them to kind of analyze your strategy, your process, and figure out where your gaps are and potentially help you close those gaps. Now, let's dive into the skills that are required, why I think you should build a project, and all of that good stuff. There are certain companies that really don't care about skills. They know that when you join the company, they can train you on the skills. They can teach you how to work with Excel. They can teach you how to build Power BI dashboards. What they're looking for is culture fit. They're looking for people who can come in, integrate into their team, be a team player, be a problem solver, people who can pivot, people who are just overall a great addition to their team and company culture. That is also one thing that you have to have in mind during your job search in 2025. Again, the market is competitive. Your skills alone is not enough. You have to have more things in your toolkit. Your skills are not just going to cut it in 2025, okay? So have the skills, have the personality, be a problem solver. I would take everything because it's a competitive market. Like anything that's going to give you an advantage, I would put that in my toolkit and go for it. So like I said, personality on check. Make sure that you're lively, bubbly as you're talking to these recruiters and these hiring managers. Make sure that you're portraying yourself as someone who's a problem solver. You can come in and solve the problem. You can come in and do the job. You're not coming up with a selfish vibe of, oh yeah, like this is no, I have the skill. No, you're coming in and you're coming in with the mindset of, I'm coming to help you solve your problems. I am the ideal candidate. Remember, it is no longer the employees market, it is the employers market, because there are more talents than there are jobs. So now you gotta pipe down a little bit if you really want to get a job in 2025. Let's talk about the skills. What are the skills that I would recommend in 2025? The one thing I would say is that for every single company, they have a different set of tools and requirements. And that's the reason why putting an emphasis on skills doesn't really work as much in 2025. However, it still shows that you are someone who have already done some work. So if you do join the company, they're not going to worry so much about training you. You're going to pick things up quickly and just run with it. And this is typically the kind of candidates that companies are looking for. They don't want someone that they're going to spoon feed everything. They want people that can come in and quickly integrate, figure out what their problem is, figure out what their processes is, and just integrate really, really quickly. So to learn the skills that typically show that you have analytical expertise, Excel is a really good one. SQL is a must-have. For every analyst, you're going to be retrieving data from like databases, data lakes, wherever, building reports, ad hoc reports, and all that good stuff. And a lot of the time, you're going to be doing that using SQL. So SQL is definitely a must-have. I recommend BI tools as well. BI tools like Power BI, Tableau, Looker, they're all great tools. I would say go the extra mile and learn some cloud databases. And not necessarily Microsoft SQL Server, like learn about Snowflake, learn about Databricks, because these are modern data stacks and there are not a lot of people who have the skills just yet. So if you do have them, it puts you at an advantage. DBT is a really good one. Airflow, even for an analyst, I think even though you don't have in-depth knowledge of these tools, just understanding it shows that you can work really well with the data engineers and you'll be a better candidate than someone who has absolutely no knowledge about these things. Lastly, Python. Now, a lot of analysts focus on Python, but Python is not necessary for analytics. If I was hiring for an analyst role and you don't have Python, I'm not gonna like hold that against you, except if you're coming in as a data engineer. If you really just want to do analytics, you don't necessarily need Python. I'm going to do a shameless plug to say that we are starting our analytics mentorship in April, in the end of April. So if you're interested in learning analytics in 2025, I highly recommend to use the link in my bio to join my newsletter so you're the first person to learn about our analytics program. And what comes with the analytics program, you're going to learn Excel and build a project in Excel, you're going to learn SQL and build a project in SQL, you're going to learn Power BI and build a project in Power BI, and finally you're going to learn Python and build a project in Python. So if you're interested in learning those skills and building out a portfolio, I highly recommend going to the link in my bio and joining the newsletter so you're the first person to know when we do launch our mentorship program. So those are the skills I would recommend in 2025 for those looking to break into analytics. However, it's also really good to know that there are other extra things that you will need to learn outside of just those skills, like ETL, how data moves from one point to another, what data sources are, like just different technicalities that companies typically handle. And these are things that we do cover in the mentorship program. One thing I have noticed, however, by talking to a lot of people who are looking to break into analytics, people get discouraged really quickly. I do want to say that your analytics journey is going to be different from every other person that you've seen online. I want you to start to look at all the resources that you see online as guides. Your analytics journey is going to look completely different from everyone else's journey. It takes some people 5 months to get a job. Some people it takes them 10, other people it takes them a year, it takes some people 4 months. So the job search, which is the last part after learning the skill and building a portfolio, is very crucial because how strategic you are with your job search is going to determine how quickly you end up getting a job. For some, they have a very rich network and they can just go on LinkedIn and say that they're looking for a job, and someone reaches out to them to say, hey, I have an opening, or I know someone who's hiring for this, and they get a job. Others, you have to work harder. Like I said, it's going to be very different for people. You have to be super intentional about your job search. You cannot just learn the skills, create a resume, and expect that you're going to get a job like that. No, it takes grit, it requires resilience, you have to keep going, and accountability. And that's one thing I would recommend for everybody looking to pivot. Again, remember that it's no longer an employee's market, it is now an employer's market, because there are more talent than there are jobs. So you have to be super strategic with your search. I'm going to reiterate everything I said in this video for those who are interested in breaking into data analytics in 2025. The first thing is to know where you are. Do an internal audit. Where am I? What is going to make me look like a rock star candidate? And what works for person A will not necessarily work for person B. If you have a degree, your search is going to be different from those who don't. If you have prior experience, your search is going to be different from those who are complete beginners. So everybody's going to have a specific tailored strategy that would help them get to where they want to be. So that's the first thing you should note. The second thing is the skill part. Like I said, there are companies that absolutely don't care about skills because they know that when you come into the company, they're going to train you. I still recommend learning the skills because I think it makes you a better candidate. And again, recruiters typically are looking for the tools on your resume, and the ATS system is also another thing that you have to battle. So if you have the right tools and the right keywords on your resume, it typically makes you look like a better candidate for the job. So I would highly recommend learning the skills, and that is Excel, Power BI, Tableau. You can learn about ETL, you can learn about Python, and all the analytics tools. You don't have to learn everything, but just learn some and show that you have done an analytics project. You understand where data is coming from, where it's going to, how to report, how to visualize data, and all that good stuff. Lastly, the job search process. You have your strategy, you have the skills, you have your portfolio. Next thing is the job search process. And this is where the resilience, the grit comes in, the thousands of job applications that may need to go out before you eventually get interviews, or you might be a rockstar candidate that just gets interviews after applying. But it does require resilience. You're not going to just get a job like that. It requires you to be resilient. It also requires visibility. So I tell my mentees all the time, go on LinkedIn, sell yourself on LinkedIn. Sell yourself as an analyst. Sell yourself as an analyst who's passionate about solving problems using data, and you will find someone who's looking for somebody like that to help with their data problems. I hope this helps if you are someone who's interested in data analytics in 2025. I do want to say that ignore all the noise online about the job market. Keep your eyes focused on looking for your job. It may not happen immediately, but it will happen eventually. And that's it in this video. I'm super excited that we have made it this far in 2025. If you have been following along, thank you so much for being part of my journey. And as always, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.